We're going to kick off this hour in Texas, where the double murder trial against Ronald Burgos-Aviles is set to pick up at 9:45 Eastern Time. Burgos-Aviles is a former Border Patrol agent who faces the possibility of the death penalty after being accused of murdering his lover and their child, 18-month-old little boy, stabbed to death. And the state says he did it. On Thursday, prosecutors called an expert to the stand to testify that cell phone data places the defendant at the scene.
What is your opinion and conclusion after using all that data?
That at or about the time the homicides are alleged to have occurred, that the defendant's phone was in the vicinity of that area. Subsequent to that time frame, both the defendant's phones and the victim's phone traveled to a different area of Laredo and then back to the crime scene area.
Joining us now to talk more about Thursday's testimony and a look ahead of what is ahead today, Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft is in Texas covering the trial for us. And let's start with yesterday. Much of yesterday was outside the presence of the jury so that the rules of the road could be established by the judge of this Daubert hearing. Fill us in on what all resulted here and what the jury ended up hearing.
Good morning, Ted, and good morning, everyone. Yes, they had the Daubert hearing yesterday. This took up most of the day. It started early in the morning. It went into the afternoon. It lasted more than 4 hours, Ted. And so during this hearing, what we heard from the cell phone analyst from the FBI. So he was talking about what his findings would be. He talked about this cell phone data and how he could use this to find so many things, like hikers that were lost, people had been kidnapped. He talked about the way that he relied on this data and how he compiled it by using not only cellular data, but also Google Maps, surveillance from local businesses. He would go and get the surveillance from local businesses. He used so much information to compile his findings, and then they used this to say that the defendant was in Father McNamara Park at or about the time of the homicides. The phones belonging to Griselda as well as Burgos-Aviles traveled then to another area of Laredo after the murders, and then both phones returned to the crime scene. Ultimately, the judge denied this motion by the defense to exclude this expert witness. The defense really made an effort here to try to get the cell phone data excluded, but in the end, it ended up not working out, Ted, and so he denied that motion. So then the jury was able to hear from the FBI analyst and hear about this cell phone data. And Ted, I can tell you the jury really was locked in when he was giving this testimony. It seemed as if they really understood what he was saying. Maybe they were thinking, wow, you can really track where people are and find out this information. In a way, someone knows where you are at all times, Ted.
Yeah, I think we all have a little bit of that now that, you know, we can be tracked by our loved ones. It has changed. Man, this comes up time and time again now in courtrooms in these cases that we cover. Yesterday, the state introduced several exhibits, including evidence, photos collected after the murders. What did the jurors see, as if they haven't seen enough already in this horrible case?
Exactly, Ted. These pictures were not very graphic, so we can get right into the photos and show you. One of the things that the state said in its opening statement was about the blood on the tailgate. You can see it right there. This was part of the whole storyline that the prosecution did, and really did a great job making a story for the jurors. And one of the things that the prosecutor said was Dominic's blood marked the tailgate of the defendant. And then yesterday, the jury got to see what we see right here. He is saying that this is Dominic's blood, and so this was the first time the jury could put that all together, picking up on the points that the prosecution made during its opening statement. Also, we had a look at some other documents. These, Ted, were these child support documents that we can take a look at. Investigators went to his desk, and on his desk, they found a green folder. This is, of course, after he was detained. They found found a green folder. It was a letter from the Texas Attorney General's office dated March 13, 2018, informing the defendant where to submit his child support payments. It was informing him that he needed to pay and how he needed to pay. And when you look at the document, it's really telling him to submit the payments for Dominic, and it's dated March 13th, 2018. Obviously, we know a few weeks later then the murders were committed, and so they were saying this would be a reason why he did not want to pay child support, Ted.
Yeah, wow. Just so much evidence stacking up against this man. Also on the stand, the criminal investigator for the U.S. Border Patrol, she was testifying about training that the state is now going to use against Burgos, but she detailed, did she not, what he was trained to do?
Yes, Ted. So this is the woman that also the evidence was admitted under her, these child support payment documents, as well as the tailgate picture of the blood. She was on the stand talking about all of this training that the defendant would have gone through as a supervisor. And she was really getting in depth about what a supervisor's training is like. She talked about the critical incidents. Let's listen to what she has to say.
A critical incident per CBP's definition is basically anything having to do with a shooting, something that's resulting in a death or a severe injury to a person while in our custody or while we're on duty.
And so supervisors are particularly trained for this type of event.
That is correct.
And with all this training, the prosecution theory is that he was going to use this training, the defendant was, to commit or attempt to commit, Ted, the perfect murders.
Yeah, a little bit less than perfect at the end of the day, as he now is facing the potential of a death penalty. What are we expecting today in terms of scheduling? They've been ripping through a lot of witnesses. I mean, yesterday, yes, the Daubert hearing delayed things, but looking into your crystal ball, Kelly, what do we see ahead?
Well, this morning and every morning is a really busy day at the courthouse, so people are already coming in here this morning. We're expecting proceedings to get underway about 8:45. The defense is going to have its turn to cross-examine that U.S. Border Patrol and Customs agent who was the woman who went out and collected all of the equipment from the defendant afterwards, after he was detained. She's going to be on the stand, so cross-examination of her today. Then we are expected to hear from one of the lead detectives, the lead detective in this case. Now, if you can remember, he is the man who confronted the defendant, asking the defendant, "What is your name?" Because at first he wasn't giving him his full name. He said to him, "What is your full name?" And there were some expletives in there as well, Ted. Also, we are going to hear from the medical examiner who performed the autopsies. So later on today, there are going to be some more graphic photos for the jury to take a look at.
Yeah, just going into a holiday weekend with images of poor little baby Dominic on their mind. This is a horrific, horrific case. Kelly Craft, thank you. We'll be checking in with Kelly throughout the day here on Court TV.